Hey guys, so today I'm going to be doing a video for you guys, and it is going to be on the Netflix series Dash and Lily's Book of Dares. Also, I am using a new camera and new audio setup, so if this is weird or it seems off, I am sorry. I need to get this video up ASAP because this is a Christmas themed show. It is currently the 23rd. This has to go up by tomorrow. So yeah, hey. What's up? I took notes on the Goodreads app and we're just going to go through it. They're not necessarily in cohesive order. Oh, Dash and Lily is a Netflix original TV show that came out in 2020 with 8 episodes. If you guys didn't know, I did do a video discussing the book, which I set as public yesterday. I recorded a few days ago, but I set it as public yesterday. So if you guys want to watch it, it is literally the video right before this. So let's talk about the plot. We have 2 main characters, which are Dash and Lily, and one day Lily leaves a red notebook at the Strand. And the Strand, if you guys don't know, is a New York City used bookstore. It is on 14th Street, right by Union Square. Dash, the other main character, finds it and opens it, reads it, and sees that there is a dare, or a prompt. It was kind of like, oh, do this, this, and this, and if you do this, this, and this, you may get a prize. Who knows? It's just like a book with it's like a regular notebook, kind of clues type thing. Just shows low-key hard to explain, but he decides to take on the dares, and they go back and forth around New York City, getting to know each other and falling in love with each other. It is a rom-com-y kind of series, if that is obvious. It is based on a YA novel by David Levithan and Rachel Kahn and David Levithan. This really matter which order you say. I realized while doing research for this video, Rachel Kahn and David Levithan wrote Nikki North's Infinite Playlist. And if you guys don't know, that is one of my top movies / books for New York romance kind of thing, around New York romance. That's a very specific genre, but I love that book. I love that story. I've watched the movie a zillion times. I've only read the book twice, but I really, really like it. I think it's going to be one of my New Year's books that I'm going to go through, honestly, because I really, really, really enjoy that story. I might do a book review, book discussion / movie thing of that if you guys are interested. I don't know. I'm going to be discussing things from a person who read the books. I read it twice. I did say that in the last one too, but I read it in 2012 when I was actually in high school, and then I read it this year. And so I might be putting my feelings of the book into this because I kind of can't separate it. As someone who loves books and wants to read the book first, while watching it with my fiance, I literally was like, this didn't happen in the book, this happened in the book, that happened, and I want to discuss it with people who may actually understand a little bit better. So, or maybe not. Maybe you're just stumbling onto this video and you're like, I watched the show, maybe I'll get it. So yeah, hi, welcome either way. So yeah, I think the acting was pretty good, honestly. And the opposite side of this, the crew side was, I thought it was really cool. Nick Jonas fucking produced this show. And Fred Savage, I don't know if he directed all the episodes, but he directed the episodes. That is fucking nuts. That's so crazy to me. Also, the fact that, we're at the stage of life where Nick Jonas is now behind the scenes, I feel like I'm getting old, but that's neither here nor there. Honestly, like I said, as someone who read the book, I honestly like the story a lot more now that this series has come out, which I know some people would be like, what? I gave this book a 3 stars. I felt like it wasn't realistic. It's a YA book, but I didn't feel like it was realistic enough. I didn't feel like the teenagers were teenagey enough. I felt like they acted way too rich to be teenagers, and so I feel like the story, the TV show actually reconned a lot of those things and made it make a lot more sense on why these people like this, because it's really, 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 really hard. You think that I'm thinking these are average New York people. They did say that they went to private school and stuff, but still, I'm just thinking about them as regular, so I really, 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 really like the filming and editing style of this show, like, honestly, it reminds me of, like, a vlog, and I don't know, like, not all of it. I'm talking about, like, the cutaway scenes, if you know what I mean, like, in between, like, when they're showing scenery, or, like, even when someone's walking, and, like, the bokeh effect in the back. Like, I loved it so much. And I know, like, I mean, also, I think it might be that basically YouTube and things have made filmmaking more accessible, and a lot more people can do it now, and so, like, things like that. It's why I'm like, oh, it looks like a YouTube video, but really it's that YouTube videos are probably getting more cinematic, which I think is brilliant, because I've been around YouTube for 10 years, and we were on webcams and cameras that, like, took a shitty ass picture. So I think I think it's fucking amazing, and I'm just like, ooh, it looks so good. In my notes I wrote this, but Edgar Thibault actually has a bigger story. I don't know. I would argue that he has a bigger storyline, but it also just has a different storyline, which at first, when I was like, because I rewatched this, I just finished rewatching this as I'm filming this, I thought that them changing this thing was a little weird. I'm like, why did they have to change the storyline? But basically, in the book, Edgar Thibault kills Lily's hamster, and that's why she fucking hates him. But in the show, he was a bully, her middle school bully. And the thing is, I was thinking about this because they also changed Sophia's, which we're gonna talk about Sophia's storyline change in a little bit. But so they did change the storyline, and I think it's because the book doesn't really have confrontation or any conflict in general, because it's pretty much a 200-300 page book. Not even, I think it's like super thin. Like, it's a very short book, and it doesn't really, like, I don't know how to explain it. It doesn't really have conflict because it doesn't need to. I think the only main objective of this is to get Dash and Lily to meet, and that's kind of the whole thing. Everything else is background noise. Yes, there's other things that are happening, but they're not really competing for the frontline attention. Whereas in a TV show, you need to have conflict. It is a main part of movie making and TV shows. It just makes more sense. I don't know if that makes sense. It's kind of like, if you've ever read, like, any books that have, like, diary entries, which this technically is kind of like diary entries because they're using a notebook to communicate back and forth, you are very much in the first person. And yes, it does, like, go in and out of being in the book and, like, their thoughts and their whole life, but it is still the idea of sending a notebook back and forth. And so they have to make those secondary characters more main characters, and it just makes more sense because they're not, I feel like in the book, Boomer and Sophia and Edgar are they're background characters, whereas here they're supporting, they're pushing the story along. Because I feel like the only people who really push the story along in the book are Dash and Lily, because they want to meet each other, they want to get to know each other a little bit more. The drive, or like what's pushing the story, is very different. And certain things just don't work on TV shows and movies, and that is okay. You have to change it for the medium, especially because you also condense things, so you need to make things flow in a way that makes sense. I will talk about that too, because technically it has better flow. Like, this has better flow. They did move things around, they did take things out, and honestly, from episodes 1 to 4, which is halfway through, I felt like it was going really fast because it was going in the, like, trajectory pretty much of the book. And then when they started changing things, I'm like, oh, that's why. Because it felt like we were getting to the end a lot quicker. And then it was like, no, we just moved things around. We changed things. Also, I think it has to do with licensing. You can't just film a FOA Shorts, which is like a toy store in New York. I don't know if they're anywhere else. Is there any FOA Shorts anywhere else? You guys know, let me know. But you can't just do that. They did show Macy's, but they didn't really show Macy's. They only really showed the outside of Macy's. In the book, they actually they do a lot more in Macy's. It's a lot more detailed, which makes, and if the company that, like, you write these things about doesn't let you do it, you can't do it. For example, they have this fake Pixar movie. If Disney and Pixar didn't approve of that, they would have had to make up a whole different studio. And so you can't always stick with a book. And I wanted to talk about the Sophia thing. So Sophia's storyline was changed. And I think that Sophia's storyline, she's kind of, how she thinks when she comes back in the book and the show are completely opposites. I feel like they're not even the same character, which is fine. I think that because of what happens in the second book, which I read the second book, but I'm not gonna talk about it, it would make sense that they changed Sophia. Because it feels like Sophia just changed all of a sudden. Which people do, they're teenagers, they're gonna fucking change. But it would flow a lot better this way. And it would give more reasons for her to be there. Like, in the book, he goes to her hotel room because she comes back from, I think, Spain. And he stays with her all night there. That doesn't push a storyline forward. If the way that they did it this time pushes the storyline forward, we learn more about the characters. There's only 8 episodes, and so you have to do things pretty quickly. I mean, I think that'd be the same even if they did it in movie form, because it's only, I think, like 2 hours, because each episode's like 24 to 27 minutes. So it does go a lot faster, and you have to go a lot faster, which I'm fine with. I feel like it did that a lot better than a lot of different TV shows. Let's talk about Lily's race. If you guys don't know, I'm pretty sure, I'm 90% sure, because when I was doing my thumbnail I was making a thumbnail today for the Dash and Lily book video I did, and I put in book cover, and it had a girl with blonde hair, so I'm pretty sure that she was white in the book. They don't really talk about race very much, especially, it just isn't, her race isn't that important in the book, and so it makes sense that they would change the race. If the character is dependent on their race, it's okay to change the race. This is a debate that's been going on a lot because people get upset. Like, why would they change this person to black? Why would they change this? It makes sense to have her have one white parent, because it seems characters that either have to be white or seems would make more sense to be white, to stay white, because half her family would be white, so it doesn't diminish the storyline. Also, another thing that I think that if she is a certain level of generation from New York, which I assume that she is, like at least a generation or two in New York, in America, the Japanese American experience is a lot different than the Japanese immigrant experience, for example. And so, if you guys didn't know, East Village has a lot of Japanese restaurants, and this mainly takes place in the East Village. She lives in the East Village. It makes sense. I know, like, they don't really talk, I feel like that's the thing that doesn't really get talked about in TV shows and movies, that the East Village is full of Japanese people. It's full of Japanese restaurants. But, like, it's a lot of Japanese people. There's a lot of Japanese culture in that area. I've gone there since I was younger, and I know people, I don't really know them anymore, but my mom knows people. My mom's Japanese, by the way. My mom knows people who own businesses over there. Something cool while I was researching this show, I was researching things, looking some things up, because I saw, even before I watched the show, like in the opening credits, it said like Midori, and I'm like, I forgot what her last name is, I think Friend, which is the main girl's name, her real name, her like actual name. I looked her up, and it was like, oh, she is Japanese. And then I found out, after like looking more stuff up, that all of the Asian people who were on screen were Japanese. When they were saying that they were Japanese, they were Japanese. They didn't hire Koreans or Chinese people to front as Japanese people. They used actual Japanese people. And I don't think that people understand how big of a deal that is, because a lot of the time that doesn't happen. Because Asians are, even just POC, are picked and like arranged, and like, you know, well, there's a POC, doesn't matter if they're the right race. And I think that this was so important. Even at the end of the series, I feel like I wish they would put a little bit more Japanese culture sprinkled in, but it's fine. This isn't about Japanese culture, but at the end they showed New Year's and Oshogatsu, and I've never in my whole life, and I watch a lot of things that have Japanese people in it or things like that. I've never seen Oshogatsu shown in an American show. It's just not something that I've ever seen, and I think that that is really cool. And as a half Japanese person, it's exciting and fun, and I love the representation that they chose. I love that Netflix decided to do it like this. And this is even before, so this was filmed in 2019. This is literally before the BLM protest or anything. They chose to have people of color in this show. They chose for that to happen, and I think that that's very fucking important. We have lots of color. I feel like in the audiobook, because I listened to the audiobook a few times, the audiobook of Dash and Lily kind of make the races, and here's why I said I don't think that race mattered for these characters, for at least Dash and Lily, is because every other character whose race mattered, like Sophia, or what was his name? Langston's boyfriend? I forgot his name. Benny. It was very, very obvious because they would put accents, very thick, stereotypical accents for these characters. And so you knew that these were not these aren't white people. And you could tell. And so for them, and I think that also really rubbed me the wrong way about this book. Audiobook. Because it didn't really happen in the actual book. But you know what I mean. Like, so I want to talk about some of the things that they changed that honestly made obvious. They didn't necessarily, I think, change. And they did and they didn't. They changed things, but also they made it more obvious. So that, like, because sometimes, I'm not even gonna lie, I can read or listen to a book 1,000 times and not pick up on some of, like, the really small things about a character. TBH, I'm not always that great at that. I am dyslexic, okay? and I think I'm on the autism spectrum, so, well, at least that's what TikTok is telling me. I like that they made it very clear that these are not, like, the kids in this, I think Lily's, like, income bracket is kind of, you don't really 100% know, but, like, she lives in the East Village, so, you know, her parents may be making bank, but then it's also her grandma's it's also the grandpa's house. So, like, are they really making bank? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you don't know. It's kind of ambiguous. But with Dash, they made it very clear that his dad is wealthy. He lives in a penthouse. It's a very fancy penthouse. Because if you guys know anything about New York, apartments are tiny. Extremely tiny. And the apartment that Dash's dad lives in isn't that. And so it shows wealth. I mean, like I said, even though in the book they went to, I think both Dash and Lily went to private schools, you can always get, like, a scholarship to private school, so I don't really know if, you know, that was, also because I assume that they're both really smart, they're really well-read, like, that wasn't like, oh, they have to be richer, but, like, you know? And also, like I said, Lily's grandpa literally owned this house in the book. He's owned this house for years. And years ago, you can get property for, like, dimes of what it is today. A house that's like $1 million, $2 million house in New York, like 50, 60 years ago was not that, especially in certain areas, were not that same price. It just wasn't. So, yeah. And, like, yeah, so now knowing that they are, because some of these things were, like, they're not that real, because that's where I mean, like, I was a teenager that grew up in New York City, and so I was like, some of this isn't relatable, but when you know that they're more at like, maybe upper middle class to, you know, like, it's different. It's a different experience. It makes sense on why it may not be relatable. I know that I'm not upper middle class, and it made it more, oh, okay, yeah. Like, and also, when you're watching it as a show, I felt very nostalgic because that's around, like, East Village, Union Square. I actually went to school in Union Square, and so watching it visually honestly made me happy because we're currently still going through a panorama, so it's not like it just isn't the same, and, like, New York isn't like that this year, and so it just kind of feels like nostalgia, and that's exciting to me. Honestly, I don't know. It just made me happy. I don't know. I think that's it. I don't know. I think that's all my points for today. I probably have more points. I just did not write everything down. And so video is at 26 minutes. So, and I have to edit this all myself. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I feel like I just kind of, like, stopped, like, full stop, like, was like, but yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video. I probably won't be uploading a video until January because I'm taking the week off, even though I know you guys were like, you took pretty much the whole month off. But technically, on my vlog channel, I put up almost every single day of Vlogmas. I think I missed like 2 days. Almost every single day of Vlogmas. See you next year. Bye.